Wet n Wild gave false information to their customers, and beauty influencers are speaking out. Before I get into the tea, I just want to put out a disclaimer. Please do not send any hate to Wet n Wild, Jackie Aina, RawBeautyKristi, or anyone else involved in this story. This video is simply meant to report on the news and give some insight on the issue. On May 20th, Cruelty-Free Kitty, a resource designed to help consumers avoid animal-tested products, made a post saying Wet n Wild has been lying to consumers about being cruelty-free. Before we go any further, I have to give you some background information. There is no legal definition of cruelty-free, but in the context of the beauty industry, cruelty-free refers to brands that do not test on animals in any stage of the production process. In order for something to be cruelty-free, the raw ingredients can't be tested on animals, the brand can't test the product on animals during production, and a third-party company can't test the final products on animals. Most US-based companies don't test their final product on animals themselves. Third-party companies will test their products on animals in order to sell them in other countries. This is why some companies are not considered cruelty-free. In order to sell in mainland China, all cosmetic products made outside China must undergo mandatory animal testing. And if a product is made in China, they're only subject to Postmarket testing. If there's a reported issue with a product, it can be pulled off the shelves for animal testing. Back to the story. Cruelty-Free Kitty founder Susanna Rose said that in March, she was tipped off by several sources saying they spotted Wet n Wild products in Watson's drugstores in Shanghai. Because Watson's is the largest health and beauty store in mainland China, it was likely the products were legitimate. After Susanna received proof that Wet n Wild products were being sold in mainland China, she emailed the brand for a statement. Wet n Wild told her, "Thank you for contacting us. At this time, we do not have any retail partners located in China. We thank you kindly for your interest in our products." And on their website, they state, "Wet n Wild never tests on animals, and we are super proud of this. We never have, and we never will. We believe in beauty without cruelty first. None of our furry, feathery, or scaly friends were harmed in the making of our products. Whether you're a card-carrying vegetarian who is committed to animal rights, and good for you, or you just love puppies and bunnies and want them to smile, and who doesn't, we are with you. We want that too." Once Susanna gathered her evidence, she made an Instagram post sharing the news with her followers. And several makeup lovers started commenting about the situation on social media. "I feel betrayed by Wet n Wild after seeing Cruelty-Free Kitty's posts about them selling in China. If you want to sell there, do so openly, but don't play with people. We need an explanation." Wow. So Wet n Wild isn't actually cruelty-free? I use so much of their stuff, why? The fact that Wet n Wild is taking this long to address things versus just saying the products are fake is stressing me out. But someone thought Wet n Wild didn't know their products were being sold in mainland China. Am I the only one that doesn't think Wet n Wild knew about their being sold in China? A brand that is so vocal about being cruelty-free wouldn't so openly set up shop in a drugstore where anyone can take a photo and post it to the internet and out them. I don't know though. Beauty guru RawBeautyKristi also tweeted about the situation. "Hey guys, I saw about Wet n Wild. Before I jump to any conclusion, I'm going to look into it and see what the brand has to say. They've been so wonderful and vocal about their cruelty-free status that I don't want to make any rash judgment without hearing their side." Then, on May 21st, Wet n Wild broke their silence with a statement they posted on their Instagram story. Stefano Curti, the global president of Wet n Wild's parent company, wrote, "Wet n Wild does not test on animals. Wet n Wild is a global brand for beauty lovers, inclusive of all ages, ethnicities, skin colors, ideologies, and economic statuses. Cruelty-free has and will remain a key pillar of our brand. In 2018, Watson's began offering our products to beauty enthusiasts in China via a pilot program with 30 stores. Wet n Wild products sold in China are domestically manufactured in China, and as such, do not require animal testing. Since 2014, China no longer requires animal testing for domestic, non-special use cosmetics. Wet n Wild products were able to enter the Chinese market, maintaining our commitment to providing customers cruelty-free, high-quality, on-trend products they can feel good about buying and wearing. As a trusted leader in cruelty-free beauty, we will continue working closely with the Chinese government and all governments to adhere to our strict guidelines for cruelty-free beauty globally." This statement directly contradicts what they wrote in their email to Cruelty-Free Kitty in March 2019. They told her they had no retail partners in China, but the statement said Wet n Wild products had been sold in China since 2018. People were upset at the news. unbelievable. Wet n Wild fooling all of us for how long? I feel so betrayed. Can't people sue Wet n Wild for false advertisement or something? Considering they say they're cruelty-free, but they really aren't? But someone thought it was hypocritical that people were boycotting Wet n Wild. Everyone, cancel culture is toxic. Wet n Wild tries to explain the China situation, still cruelty-free. Everyone, nope, canceled. How dare you? Everyone, we're done with Wet n Wild. Other people were debating whether a company should be considered cruelty-free if animal testing is done outside their control. The idea of post-market testing invalidating a firm as cruelty-free is intriguing to me because of the idea that a company should somehow be responsible for testing that may happen by an external agency after their products are sold. Any testing group, scientific laboratory, etc. could realistically purchase any number of products and test them on animals for various reasons. Like, the Chinese post-market testing agency are not cruelty-free, not Wet n Wild, and Wet n Wild is not contracting any of the tests. If the purpose of allowing for post-market testing was to shift mandatory testing by companies to mandatory testing by third parties in order to allow brands to claim cruelty-free status, then I would personally not be okay with that. It's totally true that the brand cannot be held responsible for all post-market testing, because, as you said, you cannot control what other companies want to do with your products after they're on the market. But if you know X amount of animal testing would need to occur for you to sell on a market, and you reach a compromise where the same X amount of animal testing occurs, but you do not need to conduct it in your own labs, I would not consider the company to be cruelty-free anymore. That comes off as outsourcing your animal testing as opposed to having no control over what ultimately happened to sold product. And some people were more upset about Wet n Wild lying to consumers. My issue is the lack of transparency to cruelty-free consumers. It's not like Wet n Wild is casually cruelty-free. It's been a loved cruelty-free brand for years now. If there wasn't ever the photo of the display, would they have told us that they were selling in China? Or was this a premature leak and they were going to tell consumers? I don't like brands being sneaky about their ethics. Transparency to consumers is really important. Like when NARS started selling in China in 2017, at least they announced it and made a statement about it. Wet n Wild here have been selling in China since last year, yet they haven't mentioned it ever. Logical Harmony, a cruelty-free focused blog, clarified Wet n Wild's statement in an Instagram post. While it is true that there are some ways brands can avoid pre-market animal testing, post-market animal testing laws are still in place. These are not laws that brands can simply say no to or avoid. Some of the pre-market animal testing laws have been reduced. These steps first started to be taken in 2014, but pre-market animal testing for cosmetics sold in China is still required in most cases. It's not black and white, and it's not simple. Post-market animal testing is still a huge factor in the Chinese market. The government does not have to notify the brand that they are conducting these tests. From what I've been told, the government also has brands sign statements before entering the market agreeing to these tests, and the costs of them are included in fees the brand pays the government. RawBeautyKristi also responded to the news. Anyone have a dupe for Wet n Wild Mochalicious? In an effort not to be wasteful or hateful, please do not send Wet n Wild any hate or throw your products in the trash. More waste and more hate are not the answer. Lead by example, use what you purchased, and spend your dollar where you see fit in the future. Beauty guru Jackie Aina seemed confused. So at the moment, is Wet n Wild cruelty-free or no? I need to add a disclaimer to today's video. Some of the verbiage in their recent statements seemed vague and unclear. And in the description box for her video titled, "Wet n Wild did what?" Jackie wrote, "Recently, some information has surfaced that has questioned the authenticity and nature of Wet n Wild's status as a cruelty-free brand. I was not aware of these controversies before filming this video, but I thought I would link information on it for anyone interested. A lot of people support and use brands like theirs mainly based on the fact that they do not test on animals, so I believe transparency on this information is important." On May 30th, Wet n Wild addressed their cruelty-free status again on their Twitter page. "Thank you for allowing us to be your go-to cruelty-free beauty brand. Wet n Wild does not practice animal testing. We never have and never will. Please click the link below to see the full statement from PETA." Attached to the tweet was a link to PETA's statement on Wet n Wild's cruelty-free status. "We're happy to report that Wet n Wild has met all of the requirements of our Beauty Without Bunnies program and remains cruelty-free while selling products in China." Wet n Wild also responded to several tweets from consumers. When someone said they are still consenting to the possibility of post-market animal testing on their products, Wet n Wild responded, "Nowhere have we said, nor do we allow post-market testing on animals. However, according to Ethical Elephant, a cruelty-free blog, The Chinese government doesn't have to tell a brand when their products undergo post-market testing. While PETA said Wet n Wild would be informed of any testing, the brand has to trust the Chinese government will actually inform them. When another person called them out for being late with their response, Wet n Wild said, "It took us several days to get the facts of the situation as well as to review the contracts that we have with our Chinese retailer. At this time, our certification is with the PETA program." When someone pointed out the contradiction in Cruelty-Free Kitty's post, Wet n Wild replied, "Unfortunately, the original source of the story talked to someone in our customer service department who did not know we were selling in China. No intent to lie, just weak internal communications." Another person said their social media response to the situation was petty. Honestly, Wet n Wild is really making an ass of themselves over this selling in China issue. They are coming off very petty about the situation, and I am not impressed. Your public relations should know better, especially after watching all of the recent makeup scandals. The public does not respond well to brands being defensive and petty. Again, we have seen this multiple times recently, and it never ends well. Wet n Wild said, "We've done our best to get the facts around the story and to take immediate steps to make sure it doesn't happen again. We're not shifting the blame to anyone. That would be petty. Thanks for your comment." And when someone told them to get their certification from Leaping Bunny, Wet n Wild replied, "Our regulatory people are looking into it. I've also sent your recommendation to the general manager for the brand." That seems to be the end of the situation for now. So, what's the big issue? What animal testing actually is, and what it means to be cruelty-free. In a nutshell, animal testing is the use of animals in experiments that tries to control the variables that affect behavior and the biological system under study. For the cosmetics industry, animal testing is usually done to test the safety of products for use on humans, and it's a hot-button issue, especially in the beauty industry. Here are some facts about animal testing from Humane Society International. Government regulations can require many different animal poisoning tests to determine the hazards of a single new chemical, pesticide, or medicinal product. Some tests can use thousands of animals at once, and other tests are repeated 2 or 3 times using different animal species or routes of administration, and no pain relief is provided. In the cosmetics industry, there are several tests that can be administered to animal subjects. Skin absorption tests, used to analyze the movement of a chemical in the skin and into the bloodstream. After the test is administered to rats, the animals are put down and the amount of the substance absorbed is estimated. Skin sensitization, used to determine if a chemical causes an emergency reaction. This test used to be administered to guinea pigs, but is now commonly done on mice. Acute toxicity, used to determine the danger of exposure to a chemical by skin, mouth, or inhalation. For decades, this would mean poisoning large groups of animals in lethal doses, but it's performed less frequently now. The animals are put down after the test to determine the internal damage. But there are some benefits to performing animal testing, particularly in a medical context. According to the California Biomedical Research Association, almost every medical breakthrough in the last 100 years has been thanks, at least in part, to research using animals. Studies where dogs had their pancreas removed led directly to the discovery of insulin, and apes have been critical to research and development of hepatitis vaccines. Plus, animals are the only adequate way to test on a living, whole-body system. In order to test medical side effects, scientists need a circulatory system to carry the medicine to different organs. However, there are alternatives to animal testing being developed for the cosmetics industry. Episkin, Epiderm, and Skin Ethic are all being developed as humane alternatives for in vitro skin irritation testing for chemicals and cosmetics. And while they aren't quite ready for widespread use, with more research and development, they could eventually be adequate alternatives to animal testing. L'Oreal, a cosmetics company that is not considered cruelty-free, is actively developing Episkin as a feasible alternative to animal testing. They acquired the biotechnology in 1997 and have used it to test hundreds of ingredients and finished products. So while it may not be possible to completely eliminate animal testing for every area of the scientific community yet, there are companies actively working towards that goal. Now that we've talked about animal testing, we have to discuss what it really means to be cruelty-free. Like I said earlier, cruelty-free refers to brands that do not test on animals at any stage of the production process. But there are several levels to being a cruelty-free consumer, according to beauty YouTuber Luvs Reviews. The least restrictive level is the brand itself not testing on animals, but allowing companies to test on their behalf.
Most cruelty-free consumers would say that that's not cruelty-free, but I have learned that there are people that do that. Almost every cosmetic brand that is made in the USA that is a United States brand would fall into that category, including L'Oreal, Estee Lauder brands, all of them. None of them test on animals in the United States. They don't. But they do allow the Chinese government, and they do pay the Chinese government in order to test on their behalf.
The second level is the brand does not test on animals and they are not sold in China, but their parent company does sell products in China.
And that's the case for anybody owned by L'Oreal, Estee Lauder. All of those companies, those parent companies own a ton of smaller cosmetic companies that are cruelty-free, like Too Faced, Urban Decay. All of those brands fall under that umbrella.
The third, most restrictive level is the brand does not test on animals and they are not sold in China, and they either do not have a parent company or the parent company does not sell products in China. At this point, you may be wondering, okay, but what does China have to do with anything? Well, kind of a lot. The Chinese government has mandatory animal testing laws in place in order to protect their consumers, and the Chinese market is a big moneymaker for many industries, including the beauty industry. According to Chinese law, animal testing is required for all cosmetic products made outside of China, including makeup, perfume, and skincare. In June 2014, China lifted the pre-market animal testing requirement for products made in mainland China, but those products are still subject to post-market testing if there's a reported problem. And it gets even more confusing when you talk about physically selling cosmetics in Hong Kong. The animal testing laws only apply to cosmetics physically sold in mainland China. Hong Kong is not part of mainland China, and the animal testing laws don't apply to products sold there. To make a long story short, it's an incredibly complicated and confusing issue. And because there's no official definition of cruelty-free, each person has to make their own judgment call when it comes to the cosmetic products they use. It can be overwhelming to hear all this information about animal testing and cruelty-free cosmetics, but there are things you can do as a consumer. If you want to become a cruelty-free consumer, the one thing you shouldn't do is immediately throw out all your non-cruelty-free cosmetics. Vera Nix, a cruelty-free blogger and YouTuber, says it's important to take small steps with going cruelty-free.
I believe in baby steps. Do it all gradually. So don't throw away things that you've already spent money on and bought. That's just wasteful. You're just going to be putting stuff in a landfill. I think it's better to basically, whenever you use up a product, start researching what the cruelty-free alternative is to that product.
There are great resources on cruelty-free beauty online, including Cruelty-Free Kitty, Logical Harmony, and Fira.net. You can also check the brand's packaging or website to see if they have one or more of the following symbols. Leaping Bunny, choose cruelty-free. And it's important to make a distinction between being cruelty-free with makeup and being cruelty-free with medication. Vera Nix says you should always listen to your doctor and take medications, regardless of its cruelty-free status.
Medication to live is a necessity. Makeup is a luxury. That's why for me, I choose to buy cruelty-free makeup because it's a luxury product. I don't consider medicine to be a luxury, and you should not, in my opinion, worry about that.
There are a lot of things to process with this story, and a lot of ethical questions to answer. I'm not going to tell you whether you should go cruelty-free or not. That decision should always belong to the individual consumer. But it is important to know what animal testing really is and what it means to be cruelty-free. When it comes to Wet n Wild, there are valid reasons to feel betrayed. They've openly spoken about being cruelty-free, yet they've seemed to walk back on their promise to consumers. Even if you aren't a cruelty-free consumer, the fact that they didn't give correct information on their retail partners in China may be a deal breaker for you. Now that the dust has settled on this situation, there's one key question consumers need to ask themselves. Where do we draw the line on a company's behavior towards the environment, the economic market, and their own customers? What do you think about this situation? Have you made the choice to go cruelty-free? Let me know in the comments below.